Jumatatu mpaka Ijumaa, moja kwa moja kutoka VOA Swahili.
Hello there, I'm Hayley Adams. Welcome to Africa 54. Here is what is coming up. The United States renews calls to ensure the safety of civilians fleeing the Israel-Hamas war as it tries to head off a wider regional conflict. Nigerians give us their take on the crisis in the Middle East. And defending champions South Africa knock out France 29-28 in a thrilling 7-try showdown at Stade de France to reach next weekend's Rugby World Cup semi-finals. All these stories and much more coming up on Africa 54. And we begin our broadcast with the war between Israel and Hamas. At least 1 million people have fled their homes in Gaza ahead of a probable Israeli ground offensive that is meant to eliminate Hamas leadership after the deadly attacks on Israeli soil. More now on what we know so far. Water has run out at UN shelters across Gaza. Overwhelmed doctors at the territory's largest hospital are struggling to care for patients they fear will die once generators run out of fuel. Meanwhile, U.S. President Joe Biden is considering a trip to Israel in coming days, but his travel plans have yet to be confirmed. Crowds of Palestinian dual nationals are waiting to escape the fighting at the still closed Rafah crossing. Rafah, Gaza's only connection to Egypt, was shut down nearly a week ago because of Israeli airstrikes. Gaza's health ministry says over 2,700 Palestinians have been killed and 9,700 wounded. More than 1,400 Israelis have been killed and nearly 200 others, including children, were captured by Hamas and taken into Gaza. That's according to Israel. Meanwhile, hopes for a brief ceasefire in southern Gaza to allow foreign passport holders to leave the besieged Palestinian enclave were gloomy on Monday, with Israeli bombardments intensifying ahead of an expected ground invasion. Residents of Hamas-ruled Gaza say strikes were the heaviest yet. Many houses were destroyed as video showed explosions and thick clouds of smoke rising above the Gaza skyline. Well, South Africa's Department for International Relations says that 2 of its citizens were killed in the conflict. Tanzania's ambassador to Israel says the location of 2 of its nationals remain unknown. A U.S. State Department spokesperson says at least 30 Americans have been killed in the war and 13 others remain unaccounted for. The U.S. Embassy says it is offering Americans in Israel and their immediate relatives evacuation by sea from northern Haifa to Cyprus Monday. Families are waiting at Haifa airport while U.S. embassy officials verify their documents. The U.S. has told its citizens in Gaza to get close to the crossing so they can move out. The U.S. government estimates the number of dual citizen Palestinian Americans in Gaza to be at 500 to 600. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is again in Israel after visits to several other countries in the region. The U.S. is working with Egypt, Israel and the UN to ensure aid can enter Gaza and reach those in need. Blinken reaffirmed the U.S.'s support for Israel in its fight against Hamas with meetings with the leaders of Bahrain, Egypt, Jordan, the Palestinian Authority, Qatar, Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. Speaking in Cairo Sunday after talks with Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, Blinken said the way Israel exercises the right to defend itself and its people is of utmost importance.
Israel has the right, indeed it has the obligation to defend itself against these attacks from Hamas and to try to do what it can to make sure that this never happens again. As I said in Tel Aviv, as President Biden has said, the way that Israel does this matters. Needs to do it in a way that affirms the shared values that we have for human life and human dignity, taking every possible precaution to avoid harming civilians.
Well, Egyptian President El-Sisi said during his meeting with Blinken that Israel's military operation in Gaza is exceeding the right of self-defense and has turned into a collective punishment. That's according to Egypt's state-run media. El-Sisi's is the strongest public statement made by an Arab leader during Blinken's trip. Well, reserves of fuel to power generators at all hospitals across the Gaza Strip are expected to last only 24 more hours, putting thousands of patients at risk. That's according to the United Nations Humanitarian Office. Dr. Hassan Abdusittar, who is currently with Doctors Without Borders at the Al-Shifa Hospital in Gaza, talks about the challenges facing medical personnel as they struggle to treat thousands of injured people.
My name is Dr. Hassan Abdusittar. I'm a plastic and reconstructive surgeon working with MSF. I'm currently at Shifa Hospital. The situation here is absolutely catastrophic. There is an impending public health catastrophe. There are thousands, if not tens of thousands, of people who have sought refuge in the hospital, in the grounds, but also inside the hospital, in the stairwells, in the corridors, in the wards between the patient beds. And there's a breakdown in the level of hygiene because of the lack of water and access to water. These people are terrified of the bombing, and they're right to be so. Today, a plastic surgeon from Shifa Hospital, who had just left his shift to go and check up on his family, was killed with 30 members of his family. His name was Midhat Saydam. And he's not the only one. The staff numbers are dwindling because of the fact that some people can no longer get to the hospital safely. Some people have decided that they need to be with their families, and some people have lost families, and some people have been killed. And so the functioning operating rooms is down. The Israelis are trying to force the closure of many hospitals, particularly in the north. And they're calling the hospital directors and threatening to target these hospitals in order to force a collapse. The Israelis are trying to force a collapse in the health system as part of the pressure on Palestinian society. There's over 150 patients who need to go to surgery and can't. And we're now seeing the consequences of delayed surgery in patients that have not been able to go to the operating room. My colleagues had to repair someone's face under local anesthetic because there is no access to an operating room because there are all the available rooms and anesthetists were busy. The consumables are down. Water is in short supply. Food is in short supply. Unless the humanitarian community intervenes, unless there's a humanitarian corridor to supply the hospitals and to evacuate the wounded, unless there's a cessation to the bombing, then this place is heading to absolute disaster.
Well, that was Dr. Hassan Abdusittar at the Al-Shifa Hospital in Gaza. Well, Monday's fighting in the war follows rocket and drone attacks in the northern Israel region, where both Hezbollah and Israel fired across the Lebanese border. For more on what's going on in that region, journalist Patricia Koda joins us live from Beirut. Good evening, Patricia. Are there worries inside Lebanon and inside the region that Hezbollah could now open a new front in this conflict?
Absolutely, absolutely. Since 10 days, since Saturday, we are expecting the worst. So we don't know. Every day we wake up in the morning and we don't know what is ahead of us. We are expecting Hezbollah pledged. You know that Hezbollah and Hamas are linked together, are strongly linked, and Hezbollah in the beginning of the Israeli offensive on Gaza, Hezbollah pledged to support the Hamas if there is a ground invasion of the city, and we know that there would be a ground invasion, and we are waiting, and we don't know what to expect. In fact, every day in the evening or in the afternoon, there are shelling between the Israelis and Hezbollah on the Lebanon-Israel border. So it is South Lebanon and Northern Israel. But until now, it is on a small spot of land. It's not spreading. So we are everybody in Beirut because we already had many wars with Israel. The last one was in 2006. So we are expecting the worst.
Yeah, and given that there are so many unknowns, yet this history that you talk about, Patricia, should Hezbollah join this conflict, what would that mean for Lebanon, where you are, for Israel's war on Hamas, and for the entire region?
It would be a regional war. If we think about the worst, it would be a regional war. If Hezbollah joins the conflict, it wouldn't be an Israeli-Palestinian conflict anymore. It would spread to Lebanon. We know that this war is here to last a little, to last like weeks, months, we don't know how much. And maybe it will change also the region, we don't know. So if Hezbollah joins the war, there is a very, very, very bad scenario for Lebanon, because we are in an economic crisis since 4 years, and we know that the country will be completely destroyed. This is from the Lebanese side. But we know that also it's not the Lebanese government who has the decision of the war with Israel. It's Hezbollah, like it was in 2006. So we are expecting, and we know what we are expecting the worst. And everybody is hoping here in Beirut that nothing will happen, but this is wishful thinking, I guess.
Indeed, a conflict with so many far-reaching consequences. Patricia, thank you so very much for joining us. That was journalist Patricia Koda reporting for us live from Lebanon. Thank you so much for your time. Well, moving to West Africa now, where VOA spoke to people on the streets of Abuja, Nigeria, to get their thoughts on the Israel-Hamas war.
Seeing the horror of those videos, the images, is unfortunate. Human beings being murdered and killed, women, children inclusive, it's very, very unfortunate. And for the retaliation, I think, just like I say, we are all human. And there is no one that you will lose your loved one. I think the Israel government, they are just responding as human, because there is no government that will watch his citizen be murdered on cold blood like that, and they will not respond.
I have seen some messages on Twitter and other places that some people are saying supporting Palestinian is supporting Islam. No, there are many Christians in Palestine. There are many Palestinian Christians that were killed by the Israeli soldiers. So we are not just supporting Israel, showing solidarity to Muslims in Israel, in Palestine. No, we are showing our solidarity to the oppressed people of Palestinians, being them Christian or Muslim.
We don't really know what is really happening in the world. I think we just need God, because I don't know, Palestine's fired and Israel had to fire back. I don't know, it's a two-way thing. You do me, I do you. I don't know where the world is taking us to, but I think we should just keep on trusting in God. And I believe God still have a little love and kindness for Nigeria. That's why we've not gotten to this stage where other countries are right now.
Well, Nigerians, they're expressing their thoughts on the crisis unfolding in the Middle East. Well, South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa has expressed his country's willingness to mediate the Israel-Hamas war. Reaction across the continent seems to differ depending on each African country's diplomatic relationship with Israel. For more insight, VOA's Paul Ndio spoke to Mundia Paul Hakula, a political analyst and executive director at the Continental Leadership Research Institute in Lusaka, Zambia.
A number of African countries maintain diplomatic relations with Israel and so forth. And to us, we believe that conflict has a lot to do with issues to do with human life being lost, issues to do with the destruction of properties, issues to do with the disruption of people's lives. So we are concerned as an institute over this kind of war that is between the two countries. And for us, we believe that it is important that mediation is taken and ensure that lasting solutions are actually brought on the table. And looking at what our African brothers, South Africa, are saying to say they want to be part of the process, we welcome that kind of a move, because we believe that Africa has a strategic role to play. We can't just be looking at whatever is happening and not have the role to play. So we believe that Africa has to now start taking a center stage, and the move by South Africa to actually call upon to bring themselves on board. We believe that that is important, and all other well-meaning people around the world that want to bring peace, let them also join these the hands of what South Africa is taking a lead on, so that we are able to see some form of lasting peace in that region. As you are aware, that region has been very unstable for a very long time. So whatever efforts that are there to actually save lives and bring it back to stability are welcome at this stage.
How would you respond to people who say that Africans are torn between the situation there? There are people who support Israel going into with full force to get rid of the militant group Hamas, and there are those who look at the ongoing suffering as a result of the conflict that has been waged against the Palestinians. You have mixed feelings about that. How would you respond to that?
This is the issue of humanitarian. This is the issue of lives. And lives at this particular time should be at the center stage. The issue is about the preservation of life, and the issue is about looking at the bigger picture. And the bigger picture is that there should be peace. So let us put aside our interests, and let us put issues of humanity at the forefront. We put aside the issue of allegiance, they put aside the issue of alliances and so forth. But what we need to look at is how do we bring in peace in that region. For us, we believe that peace is at the center of everything that is supposed to happen within that region. And all the allies are affected. So what's supposed to bond people together is, what is the lasting solution? The lasting solution is that let there be ceasefire. People should come on the board, on the ground, and start negotiating on the issue of the peace.
And that was Mundia Paul Hakula, a political analyst and executive director at the Continental Leadership Research Institute, speaking to VOA's Paul Ndio. As always, we're excited to hear what you think about Africa 54. You can find all our VOA Africa programs on our website at voaafrica.com. Still to come here on Africa 54, an award-winning Sudanese filmmaker documents the journey of Sudan's martial arts team. Stay with us. We'll be back in a moment.
Health, wellness, sport, beauty, medical breakthroughs. Healthy Living cares about your well-being. What are the main health concerns in Africa and around the world? Find out the latest on coronavirus. Connect with our experts and ask them questions.
How long does the virus stay?
Join me, Linor Mudu, in Washington every week on Healthy Living, right here on VOA.
Welcome back. Here's a look at other news from around the continent. At least 30 people have drowned and 167 are missing after a boat capsized on the Congo River late on Friday in northwestern Democratic Republic of Congo, according to a provincial minister. Didier Mbula, provincial health minister from Equateur province, says that 189 people have been rescued and that the search is still ongoing. The World Bank says it wants to ensure that Ugandans who are part of the LGBTQ community do not face discrimination in its programs before it resumes new funding. A World Bank executive says funding was halted in August over a controversial LGBTQ legislation in the East African nation. World Bank project documents will make it clear that the LGBTQ community in Uganda will not face discrimination. Well, in West Africa, ECOWAS is warning candidates in Liberia's recent presidential election against any premature declarations of victory and says it will crack down on instigators of violence. Liberians voted on October 10th on whether to re-elect football legend President George Weah. Vote counting is underway with the final outcome to be announced within 2 weeks of the vote. When an award-winning Sudanese filmmaker documented the journey of Sudan's martial arts team, which traveled to Kenya for an international championship in 2019, he didn't know that 4 years later he would be taking a similar path as he did in the film Journey to Kenya, but for completely different reasons. VOA's Nairobi bureau chief Mariama Diallo has the story.
It's a journey the group thought would take 2 to 3 days from Sudan to Kenya via Ethiopia to participate in an international jiu-jitsu competition in Nairobi, but it turned out to be full of surprises.
It took us 6 days, days sleeping in the car, days sleeping at a gas station in the car. And I remember that there was a coup in Ethiopia, we had no internet, and we couldn't follow the map, so we lost the road.
The hardest part for me was just sitting in the car there, it was so long.
At the end, through insurmountable challenges at times, they made it to Nairobi 2 hours before the competition started. And they made their country proud. Screening the movie for the first time in Nairobi felt different, Snoopy told us. He recently had to make a similar trip again because of the war in Sudan over the past 5 months.
Right now, I'm living my movie, not living with the characters like in before as a filmmaker. And I went through the same thing, and it was so painful because I traveled for 18 hours from Ethiopia to Kenya borders, and from Kenyan borders to here, 19 hours.
Rafael Reynes, another filmmaker, also debuted a short documentary about an unusual beauty salon in Khartoum. The salon is also a sanctuary for women across Sudan fleeing domestic violence.
I got married in 2017. The first 6 months, we were in a good place. After 6 months, my life turned 180 degrees. Then started the verbal abuse, hitting.
With this film, she's trying to help people understand what some women in Sudan go through.
The domestic violence, the harassment outside, even the rape, a lot of stuff going on. So I'm just trying to, tell the story in a creative way that's I'm not attacking the man. I'm just giving the woman space.
Last but not least, the audience got to enjoy the screening of another Sudanese filmmaker, Yasser Fayez. The award-winning 15-minute film is based on the novel The Waste Man. The actual title is considered a bit crude. It rhymes with dog sitter. The thought of the main character's daughter, who turned 18, having a boyfriend, brings up layers of her father's Sudanese culture he thought he had left behind when he emigrated to the Netherlands 26 years prior.
It's actually a film about immigrant facing problem with the culture of the place he live in. He think that he have no problem, but when these critical events, the problems came out.
While these filmmakers have found a new place to live in Kenya, they also hope to someday be able to document the war at home in Sudan. Mariama Diallo, VOA News, Nairobi.
And finally, I am so happy to be the one to tell you that defending champions South Africa knocked out France 29-28 in a thrilling 7-try encounter on Sunday to reach next weekend's Rugby World Cup semi-finals. The Springboks kept their hopes of a record 4th title alive thanks to fly half Handré Pollard's second half points, setting up a last 4 meeting with England back in Paris on Saturday. France was knocked out in the quarter-final stage despite leading at the break in a huge disappointment for the French home crowd at the Stade de France.
It was a good game. I think it was a tight game. at the end of the day, both sides played well, but the better team came out on top. It's an absolute W for South Africa, so on to the next. Let's face England in the semis, boys. Let's go!
Oh my gosh, in the beginning I was so scared because I felt like the Bokke was a bit very clumsy all over the place, but at the end of the day, they actually made it happen. Go Bokke!
We've never played this way before and we played amazing. It was full of action and drama and tears even. During the game we just kept crying because the scores kept fluctuating, but it was an amazing game at the end of the day. It was amazing.
I thought the game was amazing. It just shows how South Africa is so united as a nation. It's amazing.
It was down to passion. It was down to passion. And at the end of the day, Springboks of course pulled through and made sure that they won, but it was a really close game and we love it.
Close game indeed. Well, French President Emmanuel Macron was among the nearly 80,000 people in attendance watching the event. He should have known it is the way of the Amaboko Boko. Well, that is our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time. Goodbye.
We need to think boldly. We need to act boldly. We need some game-changing developments in agriculture and food security. Food security fundamentally depends on fertile soils and adapted crops. VAX aims to foster more resilient food systems by developing climate-resilient, nutritious crop varieties and building healthy, fertile soils. Initially, we're focusing VAX on Africa. The first question is where to plant. The answer to that question will help governments to promote effective land use planning, underpin infrastructure development that they're undertaking, and of course, underpin better food production itself. Second question, what to plant, will help farmers and governments make good decisions to maximize productivity, resilience, and nutrition. Third question, what management system to employ? That's where we have to integrate everything we know about the environment, the soils, the crop varieties, to help farmers make informed decisions. And the fourth question, how do we apply all that knowledge? That's where we hope to expand the access to hyperlocal, timely recommendations to help farmers make the kind of management decisions in real time that they need to better manage their inputs, such as fertilizer. Africa is the continent where precision agriculture is more needed than anywhere else in the world. The farmers need that kind of detailed scientific knowledge about their soils that good management, sustainable practices, and productive agriculture require.